Is this the right hat? Okay. That's what I thought. Let me thank Sasha Foster Andrews. Let me thank Zach and Jordan for their music. Let me thank Margaret Benetti, Alan Haffa, Dominique Dursa, and a special thanks to Deborah Parker. Deborah is going to be a member of the Democratic National Committee drafting committee. And she is going to help me draft a platform that works for working people in this country, that is going to tell the billionaire class that they cannot get it all. And she is especially going to be focusing, given her background, on an area that needs an enormous amount of work, and that is fundamentally changing the federal government's relationship to the Native American community. This campaign began a little over a year ago. And when we began, we were considered by all of the quote-unquote smart people and all of the experts to be a fringe campaign. There was a lot of attention paid to my sophisticated hairdo. And to my GQ type of attire. But despite all of those presidential qualities, the media did not think we would be a serious campaign. But I think what has happened is that many of the experts have underestimated how angry and frustrated the American people are with establishment politics and establishment economics. And what has happened as the campaign proceeded is we have, to everybody's surprise, won primaries and caucuses in state after state after state. We have now won 20 primaries and caucuses. And if you promise to keep it a secret, don't tell anyone. Because Secretary Clinton is already getting very nervous. I don't want to get her even more nervous. But if you don't tell anybody, I think we're going to win here in California. And if we win here, and we win in South Dakota, and we win in North Dakota, and we win in Montana, and we win in New Mexico, and we win in New Jersey, we win in Puerto Rico, we win in Washington, D.C., we are going to be going into the Democratic National Convention at the end of July. We're going to go in there with an enormous amount of momentum, and I believe we will leave that convention with the Democratic nomination. Now, here is something important that I think everybody should know, because I think the media has gotten a little confused on this one. And that is that on June 7th, no candidate, unless I am very, very mistaken, no candidate will end up with the number of pledged delegates needed to win the nomination. Whether Secretary Clinton ends up with more pledge delegates than I do, or whether we do really well, we're at 46%. And if we do well in California and the other states, we have to do very well. We could perhaps end up with a majority of the pledge delegates. But in either case, neither candidate will have the number of pledge delegates, which are the real delegates. It's the delegates that you will be voting for on June 7th. Neither candidate will have enough pledge delegates to have the number that he or she needs to win the nomination. And that means that in a kind of broken system, either Secretary Clinton and myself will need the support of superdelegates. Now, I'm not a great fan of superdelegates, and I think you have an absurd situation that before anybody else got into the race, 8 months before the first ballot in this nominating process was cast in Iowa, Secretary Clinton already had the support of 400 superdelegates. Now, it is a pretty dumb system. It is a system of anointment when 400 superdelegates come on board a campaign before anybody else had indicated that they would be running, and 8 months before the first ballot was cast, and certainly at a time when nobody has seen how this entire campaign has played out. So the point that we made is an unfair system, and it's a dumb system, and it's a system we will change. The point we are going to be making to the convention is a very, very important point, and that is the responsibility of the convention is to make sure that we have a candidate who will defeat Donald Trump. For a dozen or more reasons, Donald Trump should not and will not become President of the United States. But the case that we have got to make is that if those delegates look at virtually every national poll, if they look at statewide polls, there was just a poll came out here a couple of days ago. Hillary Clinton was ahead of Donald Trump in California by 10 points. And that is not a lot, given that California is one of the more progressive states in the country. We were ahead by 17 points. And we see the same thing in every national poll. She's ahead of Trump by a few points. Occasionally, she is trailing Trump. But we, in virtually every national and state poll, are doing much better than Hillary Clinton against Trump. And the reason for that is that while Secretary Clinton does well with Democrats, and I do well with Democrats, we do better with independents, people who frankly and for good reason are not enthusiastic about either the Democratic or the Republican Party. But here is the second reason, an important reason, why we are the strongest campaign. And that is, just look around here in Monterey tonight. And what this campaign has done is brought together millions of people, working people, and young people who are prepared to stand up and fight for real change in this country. Any objective observer, not me, but any objective observer will tell you that our campaign has the energy, has the enthusiasm that Clinton's campaign does not have. And what energy and enthusiasm and determination translate into is a large voter turnout in November. Republicans win elections when people are demoralized, when they give up on politics, and when they don't vote. Democrats and progressives win elections when people are prepared to get involved in the political process, to fight for change, and that is our campaign. If elected president, one of the many things we are going to do is transform the very nature of the Democratic Party. Now, I want to ask you, I was in Santa Cruz earlier and I asked them, but I want to ask you the same question, to be honest with me with your answer. How many people here have ever attended a meeting of the Democratic Party? Raise your hand. I would say it's about 5% or less of the people. I want to open up the doors of the Democratic Party so that everybody here feels welcome to come in. And that is not the case right now. The truth is, and I don't think any honest person would deny it, and this is true of the Republicans as well, that a lot of people in both parties, you know what they spend most of their time doing? They're not here in Monterey talking to 5,000 people. They're out in some rich person's home raising money. And that's got to change. Instead of raising money from Wall Street and billionaires, we need a political party and a political movement in which millions of working people and young people are actively involved. We should not be taking money from Wall Street. We should be taking Wall Street on. One of the most exciting and in fact surprising aspects of this whole campaign, and I would not have predicted it, is that in state after state, when we win and even when we lose, we have won the overwhelming majority of the votes from young people. And by young people, I don't mean just the 20-year-olds. I mean, or the 19-year-olds. I mean people 45 years of age and younger. Now, I know that if you are 19, 45 does not seem young, right? But when you are 45, it will seem very young. Your perspective will change. But the reason why this is so exciting is that when you look into the future of our country, what we now know is that our vision, our shared vision, which is a nation based on social justice, economic justice, racial justice, and environmental justice, that is the future of our country and should be the future of the Democratic Party. the achievements that we have secured that I am enormously proud of, and that in fact is unprecedented in American history, is that we have up to this point received almost 8 million individual campaign contributions. 8 million. And that is more than any other candidate in the history of our country up until this point. Anybody know the average campaign contribution? $27. That's pretty good. And what that shows is that our campaign can run a winning national campaign without begging billionaires or Wall Street or the drug companies for their money. Now, Secretary Clinton has chosen to raise her campaign funds in a different way. She has not one super PAC, but a number of super PACs. And she has raised many millions of dollars from Wall Street and other special interests. Now, I know that people say, well, yes, I get all this special interest money, but it doesn't impact me. I don't think anybody believes that. This campaign is doing so well and is going to win because we're doing something very unusual in American politics. We're telling the truth. And here is the truth. You may not see it on TV, you may not read it in the papers, but this is the truth. We are now living under a corrupt campaign finance system, a system which is undermining the foundations of American democracy. That is a simple, straightforward truth. What democracy is about is not complicated. It is that every person is entitled to a vote. One person, one vote. Democracy is not about billionaires buying elections. And that is why we are going together to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. But it is not just a corrupt campaign finance system that we have got to overturn. It is a rigged economy. And again, you're not going to see too much of it on corporate media, but here is the reality. The reality is today, in this country, the top 1/10 of 1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. The wealthiest 20 people own more wealth than the bottom 150 million people, half of our country. One family, the Walton family of Walmart, owns more wealth, one family, than the bottom 42% of the American people. A rigged economy is when people in this country are forced to work longer hours for lower wages. A rigged economy is when people in Vermont and California are forced to work 2 or 3 jobs to earn enough income and health care benefits to take care of their families. A rigged economy is when a mother has to go out to work and makes $11 an hour, which is not enough to pay for the child care she needs for the rent she pays or to take care of her children with dignity. A rigged economy is when veterans who have put their lives on the line to defend this country now sleep out on the streets. A rigged economy is when a CEO of a large corporation makes $40 million a year and then cuts back on the wages, health care, and pensions of his employees. A rigged economy is when a profitable corporation shuts down in the United States because they can make more money moving to China. A rigged economy is when over the last 25 years there has been a massive transfer of wealth from the middle class of this country, and I'm talking about trillions of dollars, to the top 1/10 of 1%. Our job, brothers and sisters, is to create an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. An economy that works for the middle class, for the children, for the elderly, for the sick, and for the poor. That is our economy. This campaign, though, is not just about ending a corrupt campaign finance system and a rigged economy. It is about ending a broken criminal justice system. It is unconscionable and it is embarrassing for every one of us and every American that today we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. We are now spending $80 billion a year to lock up 2.2 million Americans. Brothers and sisters, that is going to change. And what this campaign is about is asking the American people to think outside of the box, to think in ways that Congress does not think, that's not hard to do, or ways that the media does not ask us to think. In other words, in Congress, we are very often asked to make a choice. Should you cut back on nutrition programs for hungry kids, or should you cut back on education? Should you cut back on climate change? Should you cut back on infrastructure? Those are the choices that we are given. But we know there are other choices. Among others, we're going to demand that the billionaires and large corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. But with regard to criminal justice, here is what we have got to understand. Right now, in communities, in inner cities, and in rural areas, there are youth unemployment rates for kids who have graduated high school of 30, 40, 50%. Often these are African American communities and Latino communities and rural white communities. And when kids graduate high school and there is no job for them, when they hang out on street corners, that is when young people can get into trouble. So I believe that what we must do is invest in our young people in jobs and education, not in jails and incarceration. I want to see our young people studying I want to see our young people earning a decent wage, working in a meaningful job, not rotting in a jail cell. And let us not forget, it costs less money to send somebody to the University of California than to lock that person up. And there is something profoundly wrong in this state and in all across this country when we are building a lot more jails than colleges and universities. But when we talk about criminal justice, it's not just dealing with youth unemployment. It is taking a hard look at local police departments all across this country. Now, I was a mayor of Burlington, Vermont for 8 years. I worked with my police department. I worked with police officials all across this country. The vast majority of police officers are honest, hardworking, and they have a very difficult job. But like any other public official, if a police officer breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable. We have got to demilitarize local police departments. We have got to make local police departments reflect the diversity of the people they serve. We have got to end corporate ownership of prisons and detention centers. We have got to change all over this country law enforcement culture so that we all understand that using lethal force, killing somebody, is the last response, not the first response. It is not wimpy for a police officer to break up a dangerous situation without killing somebody. That's not wimpy, that's heroic, and that's what has to be done. This campaign is going to win because instead of talking to billionaire campaign contributors, we are listening to ordinary Americans. We are listening to workers who tell me loudly and clearly they can't make it on $9 or $10 an hour. The current federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is a starvation wage. It's got to be raised to $15 an hour. Real unemployment in this country is not 5%. It is close to 10% when you include those people who have given up looking for work and people who are working part-time. We need a massive federal jobs program to put people in America back to work at good wages. We should be hiring teachers, not firing teachers. We should be creating the best child care pre-K system in the world. We should be rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, roads and bridges and water systems and wastewater plants. And when we do that, we create 13 million good-paying jobs. And when we talk about raising the minimum wage and pay and equitable wages, we have got to end this absurdity of women making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. I know that every man will stand with the women in the fight for pay equity. Equal pay for equal work is what we need in this country. also listening to women when they tell me they are sick and tired of listening to Republicans running all over this country talking about family values. Because everybody here knows what Republicans mean by family values. What they mean is that no woman here in California or in the United States should have the right to control her own body. We disagree. And what Republican family values also mean is that gay people in our country should not have the right to get married. We disagree. Now, Jane and I have been married 28 years. And thank you. And there's nobody you know who believes more in family than Jane does. But when we talk about family values, what we mean is ending the international embarrassment. Think about this. You don't see it much on media, but think about it. The United States is the only major country on earth that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave. And this is what that means. It means that today in California and in Vermont and all over this country, women are having beautiful babies. But if that woman is working class or low income, the odds are that in a week or two, she will have to separate herself from that beautiful new baby and go back to work in order to earn the income she needs to take care of her family. That is not a family value. That is the opposite of what a family value is about. And that is why together we are going to pass legislation requiring and guaranteeing 3 months paid family and medical leave. This campaign is listening to young people. And what young people are asking me is, how does it happen that after they do exactly the right thing, they go out and they get the best education that they can, why is it that they're ending up $30,000, $50,000, $70,000 in debt? Now, everybody here knows that we live in an extremely competitive global economy. If this country is to succeed now and in the future in a changing economy with a changing technology, we need the best educated workforce in the world. And here is the truth. The truth is that 50 years ago, 40 years ago, in America, you had a high school degree, you were doing pretty well. You could go out, get a decent job, and make it into the middle class. By and large, those days have ended. People need more education, more training to do the work of this period. And that is why I believe that when we talk about free public education, it is not good enough to talk about first grade through 12th grade. We need to make public colleges and universities tuition free. If you think outside of the box for 1 second, does anybody here think that that is a radical idea? It really is not. It is an eminently commonsensical idea. It's an idea that exists already in Germany. It exists in Scandinavia and in other countries. They are smart enough to be investing in their young people, and when you invest in your young people, you are investing in the future of your country. And this is what I also believe. I grew up in a family, we didn't have much money. My mother, my father never went to college. And millions of families in America are in that same boat. This is what I want to see. I want to see every kid in Monterey, every kid in America know, if they're in the 4th grade, 6th grade, freshmen in high school, I want them to know that if they study hard, if they take school seriously, if they do well in school, that regardless of the income of their family, yes, they will be able to get a college education. How many people here have student debt? Whoa. Well, welcome to the club. There are millions in your same boat. Now think about this again. Think about it. We should be rewarding people who get the education they need, not punishing them. We should not be forcing debt on people, which they're going to have to pay back year after year, sometimes decade after decade. There are people out there who cannot afford a car because they're paying off their student debt. They can't afford a house, they can't get married, they can't have children. That is nuts. And what I think we should do is make sure that every person in this country who is carrying student debt is able to repay those loans by refinancing them at the lowest interest rates they can find. Making public colleges and universities tuition-free, substantially reducing student debt is not an inexpensive proposition. It costs about $70 billion a year, a lot of money. How are we going to pay for it? Well, I will tell you exactly how we're going to pay for it. 8 years ago, against my vote, the Congress bailed out Wall Street after Wall Street's greed and recklessness and illegal behavior drove this economy into a horrendous recession. The CEOs on Wall Street went begging the Congress, please bail us out, we will be good boys. Well, today Wall Street is doing just fine. Now is the time to impose a tax on Wall Street speculation. And that tax alone would bring in more than enough money to make public colleges and universities tuition-free and significantly reduce student debt. Now, Wall Street does not like this idea. But I think Wall Street is going to learn that the days in which they got everything they wanted is now ending. This campaign is listening to the Latino community. And they remind us is that today in America, there are 11 million undocumented people, and many people in this area are undocumented. And what happens when people are undocumented is that they are exploited. They have no legal rights, and their employers can cheat them, and their employers do cheat them. Because if you have no legal rights, you cannot stand up and fight back. And that is why I believe the Congress must move toward comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. And that is why I believe we must end the current deportation policy. The function of immigration reform must be to unite families, not divide families. And if the Congress does not do its job, I will use the executive powers of the presidency to do what I can. This campaign is listening to the African American community. I have been all over this country, and I've been to inner cities, in Flint, Michigan, in Detroit, in Baltimore, in Philadelphia, New York City. I've been there. And what I have seen, the poverty that I have seen, the human suffering that I have seen, should not be taking place in the United States of America in the year 2016. The African American community asked me, how come we can spend trillions of dollars on a war in Iraq we never should have gotten into, but somehow we don't have the money to rebuild inner cities in this country. Together, we are going to change our national priorities. Instead of the rebuilding communities in Iraq and Afghanistan, we're going to rebuild them right here in the United States of America. And as Deborah Parker mentioned you when she introduced me, this campaign is going to start paying attention to a group of people whose pain is very rarely heard, and that is the Native American people. Everybody knows that the Native American people, from the very first days of this country, from before the time we became a country, when the first settlers came here, Native American people have been lied to, they have been cheated, and treaties they negotiated were broken. Meanwhile, as you all also know, the Native American people have incredibly enriched our culture. And we owe them a debt of gratitude that we can never fully repay. And perhaps the most important lesson that they have been trying to teach us, and we had better learn, is that as human beings, we are part of nature. We must live with nature. And if we continue to destroy nature, we are ultimately destroying ourselves. But despite their gifts to our country today all over America, in Native American communities and on reservations, unemployment and poverty are sky high, educational opportunities and health care is often abysmal. Together, we are going to change the federal government's relationship to the Native American people. I am a member of the U.S. Senate Committee on the Environment. And I know, having talked to scientists all over the world, what Donald Trump does not know. I know that climate change is real, that climate change is caused by human activity, and that climate change in California, in our country, and all over the world is already doing devastating harm. And what I also know, and what the scientists are telling us as loudly as they can, and boy, had we better listen to them, is if we don't get our act together in the near future, a bad situation will become much worse. More drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, more acidification of the ocean, more rising sea levels, more international conflict as people fight over limited natural resources. We have a moral responsibility to make certain that we leave this planet in a way that is healthy and habitable for our children and our future generations. And that is why, together, we are going to take on the fossil fuel industry, and we are going to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And let me say, on that area, Secretary Clinton and I have an important disagreement. I see climate change is a major planetary crisis. I believe we have got to be extremely bold. I believe there should be a tax on carbon. And there's another area of growing consequence. It's getting worse, and I think more and more people are now paying attention to it. And that is whether or not this country, and in fact the world, will have the clean drinking water that we need in years to come. Right now in California and in many communities of this country, people are turning on the tap. They cannot drink the water because it is polluted and toxic. In my view, now is the time to end fracking. My state of Vermont was the first state in the country to end fracking, and if I have anything to say about it, we're going to end it in the other 49 states as well. And this is another area where Secretary Clinton and I have an important disagreement. Not only is she not supportive of ending fracking, when she was Secretary of State, she actively pushed the fracking technology on other countries around the world. Let me be as clear as I can be and say something which often my critics, and the media, and everybody else disagrees with me on, but let me be honest with you and tell you what I believe. I believe that health care is a right of all people, not privilege. And that means that the United States has got to join every other major industrialized country, United Kingdom, France, Germany, Holland, Italy, Scandinavia. I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border, Canada. All of those countries provide health care as a right to all of their people. Now, the Affordable Care Act, in my view, has done some very important things, but we have to go further. It is not, let me ask you a question. How many people here have no health insurance? Please raise your hand. Wow. How many people are underinsured with high deductibles and high copayments? Okay. Those hands indicate a dysfunctional and failed healthcare system. And we're going to change that. This morning, I met with some doctors who reminded me that because millions of Americans have no health insurance and others have high deductibles and co-payments, which prevent them from going to the doctor when they should, that people every day are dying because they go to the doctor too late. And I've talked to doctors who tell me they have seen patients walk in the door and they say to the patients, "Why didn't you come in here a year ago when you first felt your symptoms?" And the people say, "I had no health insurance. I couldn't afford to go to the doctor." That is not what America is supposed to be about. We are losing 40,000 people a year who die unnecessarily because they don't get the medical treatment they need when they need it. And that is why, together, we are going to pass a Medicare for all healthcare system. And when we pass a Medicare for all healthcare system, we are also taking on the greed of the pharmaceutical industry, which is charging us by far the highest prices in the world for the medicine we use. Now, it is crazy. If you want to hear crazy, this is crazy. 1 out of 5 people, 1 out of 5, who go to the doctor and get a prescription, they can't afford to fill that prescription. You have senior citizens in California and in Vermont who cut their pills in half, which is a bad thing to do because they cannot afford the medicine they need. But last year, the major 5 drug companies made $50 billion in profit. And over the years, the major drug companies have given severance packages, retirement packages to their CEOs of over $100 million. Our job is, and we will bring this about, is standing up to the insurance companies, standing up to the drug companies, and telling them that the function of health care is to provide quality care, comprehensive care to all of our people, not to have them make billions of dollars off human sick. Everybody here knows a very profound lesson of American history. And that lesson is that real change never ever takes place from the top on down. It always takes place from the bottom on up. Think about the condition of workers in America over 100 years ago when people were working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and children were working in factories. And what the working class of America said, that is not acceptable. We are human beings and we want to be treated with dignity. We will form trade unions and negotiate contracts. And we thank the American trade union movement for giving us, for fighting for us in creating the modern middle class of this country. 150 years ago, amidst the abomination of slavery, there were African Americans and their allies who stood up and fought back and had a vision for America that the day would come when we would end racism and segregation and bigotry. And over the years, millions of people stood up, fought back, they went to jail, some of them were killed, some of them were beaten. But they stood united, having a vision of a non-racist America. Many children don't know this, less than 100 years ago, not a long time ago, from an historical perspective, women in America did not have the right to vote, to get the education they wanted, or do the work they wanted. Women were told by the establishment of their time and by the culture of their time that a woman's place is home, keeping house, and having babies. But women stood up and they said to the establishment and the ruling class, "You will not define us, we will define our own lives." And women and their male allies stood up and said loudly and clearly, women will not be second-class citizens in this country. Think about this. If we were here 10 years ago and somebody jumped up and said, "You know, Bernie, I think that by the year 2015, gay marriage will be legal in every state in this country," the person next to her would have said, "You're nuts. There's too much homophobia in the country, too much hatred, too much bigotry. Ain't gonna happen." But what did happen is that the gay community and their straight allies, with enormous courage, said to our nation that people should have the right to love whoever they want, regardless of their gender. And that's how change occurs. And here's also how change occurs right now, as we speak. 5 years ago, if we were here, somebody jumps up and says, "You know, Bernie, this $7.25 federal minimum wage, it's a starvation wage. It is an outrage. We have to raise that minimum wage to $15 an hour." Person next to them would have said, $15 an hour? You want to go from 7.25 to $15? You're crazy. You're radical. You're a dreamer. It can't happen. You're asking too much. But then something remarkable occurred. And that is that the workers in the fast food industry, in McDonald's and Burger King and in Wendy's, they went out on strike. And they stood up and they told their neighbors and they told this country, a human being in America cannot live on 7.25 an hour. That we've got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. And then, up in Seattle, 3 years ago, City Council voted $15 an hour. And then San Francisco and Los Angeles, $15 an hour. And California and New York State, $15 an hour. And if I have anything to say about it, and I will, as president, there'll be $15 an hour in every state in this country. Now here is my point. Throughout history, the establishment, the ruling class, always tells people, think small, don't think big. You can't accomplish big things. We have the power. We have the wealth. You are nothing. And what we are saying in this campaign is sorry, too late for that kind of thinking. We are going to create the nation we want. And all across this country, from Maine to California, people are looking around them and they're saying, what is going on in this great country? Why has the middle class been shrinking for the last 25 years and almost all new income and wealth goes to the top 1%? Why are we seeing a proliferation of billionaires while we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth? Why are we the only major country not to guarantee paid family and medical leave? Why are young people leaving school $30,000, $70,000 in debt? Why are women making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men? Why is our infrastructure collapsing when we have so many unemployed workers ready to rebuild that infrastructure? Why are corporations shutting down in America and moving to low-wage countries abroad? Why do we continue to have a corrupt campaign finance system that allows billionaires to buy elections? That is what the American people are thinking about. And what they are concluding, and what this campaign is about, is that it is too late for establishment politics and establishment economics. The establishment has betrayed the American people, and now is the time for real change. And if we learn from history, from the workers' movement, from the civil rights movement, from the women's movement, from the gay movement, if we learn from history, what we learn is the only way that real change takes place is when millions of people stand up and fight for that change. That is what this campaign is about. What this campaign is about is creating a government that works for all of us and not just the 1%. On June 7th, there's going to be an enormously important primary, Democratic primary right here in California. 475 delegates are at stake. I believe that if there is a large voter turnout, not only will we win this primary, we will win it big. So I am asking tonight the people of Monterey, I'm asking the people of California to make the Democratic primary on June 7th have the largest voter turnout of any primary in California. California is the largest state in this country. It is one of the most progressive states in this country. And I'm asking the people of California to help lead us into the political revolution. Thank you all very much.